Next panelist, Mr. Dinesh Vasu, CEO, Agency for Integrated Care. Next we have Mr. Neil Humphreys. Everyone knows Neil, Singapore's best-selling author, radio host, and podcaster. But more than that, right? Last but not least, Mr. Tim Lee, CEO, Caregivers Alliance Limited. Hello, Tim. And this panel will be moderated by Ms Lin Suling, Senior Columnist, The Straits Times.
Hi guys, we stand before you and coffee break, but I don't know about you, I'm really fired up from that last one, aren't you? The other reason why I'm really fired up is that when I was first asked to moderate this panel, I realized that my panelists were mostly male. And a panel on care work with a mostly male panel, rock solid. You know it's going to be a good one. Now, we've been through a pretty packed agenda for the day, so I thought I'll just summarize to frame where we've looked at and where we are right now. You know that from the earlier sessions, you've heard about how demographics is a key challenge for Asian societies. From our keynote speaker, Dr. Jennifer Scuba, she talked about the triple burden falling on women. Gotta have more kids, gotta care more, gotta work harder. And coming from the earlier two panels, you've heard about the first two, which is the need to provide space for people who want families. And you've just heard about how we can equalize the pay gap in the workplace. So continuing from that, today our topic is about what is asked of women when it comes to caregiving and how we should recognize and value care work. Now, of course, care work should obviously be gender neutral, but we know that reality is far from that ideal. And why this matters is because only when we have equality in the home can we have equality in the workplace and in society at large. Now, the litmus test, of course, as our title points out, is care work. Should it be paid work? Why not, right? Zooming out, it's a sharp reminder of how care work in an aging society with fewer helping hands to raise children and care for family members is coming into sharper focus. And zooming into Singapore, where we've heard a pretty groundbreaking speech at our National Day rally, when our new Prime Minister, Lawrence Wong, gave huge benefits for parents with newborns, and he also put the onus on men to step up. Now, of course, care work is what helps people flourish, and it enables every aspect of work to be done and for the economy to go on. And if properly understood, we all know that informal care work would be valued and compensated appropriately instead of being penalized. So that is the question before us today. What is the kind of care we need for an aging, shrinking maybe population? And at the heart of it is care work a public good? These are the issues our speakers will try to tackle today. Sochin's done a fantastic job at introducing them already, so I won't do that. But what I will do instead is to try to get each panelist to give their short remarks, and then we can push off from there from questions from me as the moderator, and then I'll open it up to the floor. So why don't we start with Corinna and then go this way? Corinna, please take us away.
Thank you. So firstly, Jason Moo, we need more Jason Moos. More male allies. So I just want to say, Aware is starting its male allyship new program on 19 September for the men who want to how do I be a male ally? Okay, so first, the keynote was fantastic, and Jennifer Schuber, thank you for that. The gender lens, I will try to use that and build on that. The gender lens in terms of care work. Firstly, aging is a gendered issue. And I don't know whether Sound Foundation is here, but in 2005, Marianne, Susanna, we worked on this. And the thing about demographics is that you can see it a mile away. Even though it's unprecedented, this change in demographics, but it is predictable because, you can actually predict what lives are going to be like, right? So we saw this, and the research was called Women Growing Older and Poorer. And okay, we're all aging, but women do live longer. They are also poorer because they take time off work to give care. And they also marry men who are older than themselves, by and large, right? So then their husbands age first, and then they pass away. And I was very struck at that time when I saw the stats. At 80 years old, there are 72% more women than men. Women outlive men by a lot. And they are going to be alone. And the answer has always been, oh, but they have children. But how can that be an answer today, right? To what Jennifer has said, all our countries are low fertility rate. And so this is truly a gender issue. Care is also a gender issue. We don't need to say more about that, but in terms of women taking care of, and this is AWARE's research about 3 years ago, we did a research on women taking care of their parents. Many of them single. Many of them have given up work for 5 years or more, and they are about 50 years old. How do you get back to the workforce at 50, 55? It's really difficult. And they were very worried. And our worry is that they will be the next ones to age into poverty. So by all accounts, this is a highly gendered and very critical issue for Singapore to solve. Our norms and our policies are also gendered. You might not see it, and you might say, oh, we're gender neutral. We started to have paid maternity leave, government paid maternity leave, in 2004. And we only had paid paternity leave in 2013. It took 9 years for us to make, to actually offer men some leave. Okay, we can say, well, the society wasn't ready for it. The values have to change, and then the policies will follow. That's not how the Scandinavians have done it. Men actually were not so into giving care to children, but they changed the policy and said, we're giving you this leave. It is paid leave. You use it or you lose it. And then now you see men just, walking the strollers on the streets, and they drop by at a cafe, and they're called, I think, latte papas, right? So it can be that policy actually shapes our norms. And you might have to do it in a gradual way so that it's not like you have a Korea situation where they don't. But I really feel like it is at all levels that we have to look at this. So having said that, what can we do? And I have only 5 minutes, and I am going to go into some strategies. First of all, recognize that care work is real work, right? Work of the highest value. And what doesn't get counted doesn't count. This is really true. And in economics, care work, unpaid work, just doesn't count. There is a measure that approximately 15% of, if we actually did count it, it would constitute 15% of GDP in the developed countries. So it doesn't mean that you have to pay directly to the caregiver, because paid leave is an example of paying for care work, right? You get paid leave. How much elder care leave do we have in Singapore? 0 days. 0 days of mandatory elder care leave. And we're like, okay, the employers, we're just given the shared parenting leave, how are they going to cope, right? We're always thinking about the employers because we are pro-business. I told my friends at MSF, I will suggest a low-hanging fruit. How many days of medical leave do we have? 14 days. The average utilization of this is 4 days. You have another 10 days, right? Can we expand this so that it's like sick leave for yourself, and if your family member needs to have leave, they can use this, right? If we have to be creative, and we have to move fast, because in 2025 the baby boomers turn 75. The baby boomers is a large cohort. Our parents are okay before 75, but come 75, it will probably feel quite different. We will have to go to the hospital, etc. more. Another idea is the carer's passport, which I really like, and this is something that the UK has done. So basically, it's not, I think it's a private and public sector thing. People get a recognition, an official recognition that they are a carer. And then retailers can say, oh, you're a carer, here's discount. Employers can say, you are a carer, okay, we can give accommodations. There is a recognition of this person as a carer, and that in itself can open many doors in society, right? We need to also reduce, so the second R that was recognized, the second R is reduce the burden of unpaid care work. So care work is actually difficult because there is, is complex. There is the care work that requires nursing, a lot of skills. But where there is an opportunity and a need, a big need, is actually the care work that is the lighter kind of care work. I guess it's called social care. It's somewhere between personal care and medical care. And many families, the families that we interviewed, they found it really difficult because they took time off in order to take care of their relatives, and it wasn't nursing work. It was to make the appointments, to see the doctor, the bed broke down, we need to replace it, all that kind of stuff, right? And that's not subsidized in any way, but someone has to do that work. So can we reduce that? And can we maybe think about Care Shield Life being released more, being used more, tapped on, so that it's not only available when this person has 2 ADLs that they're struggling with, 3 ADLs. So we need to actually make Care Shield Life more available so that we can actually pay for care that someone else can do, right? Otherwise, people will give up work. Third R is redistribute. This is where men come into the picture. So, we did home economics, and home economics was about it's generally taken by girls, and they learn how to cook, and they learn how to sew. Can we change that? Can we change home economics to care and well-being program so that the grandkid can also look after the grandparent and know, okay, I think these are symptoms of a stroke, right? So there are things that we can do even within this present system that we have, which are not so difficult. And fourthly, reward, right? The elephant in the room is that we have foreign domestic workers that are paid very little. So how much do we, if we wanted to pay for care work, how much would that be? If you start at least with, say, 1,300, which is what a health care aide, not a foreign domestic worker, would be paid, maybe that's one sort of threshold. But think about, if we want to have a low-hanging fruit here, I would say top up people's CPF, right? At the very least, so that when they age, these caregivers age, they actually have some CPF and they can afford their retirement and their own health care. So these are some ideas so that we actually get into some policy discussion as well. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Corinna. Dinesh, maybe you can set the context a little bit for us and talk a little bit about how care needs have changed over the years? Why is this happening now? Is it because of family sizes are shrinking, demographics are changing, we're aging? Help us situate this a little bit.
Okay, thanks for having me. My name is Dinesh and I'm from the Agency for Integrated Care, and my agency deals with a whole range of issues, inclusive of mental health, seniors, and as well as caregivers as well. From a national perspective, I think we all know that we are living longer. We are considered a blue zone city, so the average life expectancy has gone up. But I think what's most worrying is that the last final years of individuals are often spent moving in and out of hospitals. So nationally, if we can reduce that towards not just living long, but living long and healthy lives, I think we'll be in a far better position. Second, of course, the nuclear family is getting smaller, TFRs are reducing, so caregiver needs are indeed, added to an already small family. Now, if you add the two together, you'd see in future situations where sometimes you would have a multi-generational family where the grandparent is still around, probably reaching about 90, 100. The children will still be around, also needing care, about 70 plus years. And the children, their grandchildren, they may be about 40 or 50, who will be dealing with both as two levels of parents and grandparents, as well as their children as well. So this will be an increasing issue that we might see moving forward. So nationally, the strategy would be to be as proactive as we can be in terms of making sure first that people are taking care of their health as proactively as they can. But this is just one part of the equation. Second, the government has, okay, I'm not speaking on behalf of government, just so that we are all absolutely clear. I'm an agency that is funded by MOH, but I'm a private agency by far. Now, having said that, the second area that we are looking at as well would be to see what else can we do to support caregivers. And in this, I think multiple helping hands strategy is something that government has always advocated. So it's not just going to be government alone, but with private sector, with families, with maybe the clan organizations, all coming in to support the families in, together with grassroots, of course, to support the families in doing what care needs are among families. I also want to add that I often hear the notion of, we have an aging society and therefore we are in deep trouble and stuff like that. But one of the main efforts that I will be embarking on later part of this year is really to change the branding of what it means to be a senior. Sometimes as we age, the opportunities are a lot higher, a lot more you can do, both in terms of taking care of your health and things that you may not have been able to do when you were much younger because of your caregiving needs and so on. So we do need to change the paradigm of what it means to be aging as well. Now, with that, I mean, we have seen many people who are of senior vintage, but yet their ability to then support in a workplace environment is always there. The experience is there, and I think there's enough that we can tap on them as we go. I don't think we should, kind of draw a line by way of age and saying that, oh, you've crossed a certain age and therefore you should be taken care of. I think a lot of it will be best placed if we take care of ourselves and we empower our seniors to take care of themselves as well.
And Neil, I know Dinesh has given us a very good macro perspective on care. I think you're going to give us a individual level personal story about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, as a white, straight male, I thought it was important to bring some diversity to the room. I'm just going to try and start with some booing. No, my story is very personal. I've written 30-something books, and many of them touch on social issues, including care work, including the treatment of women, including the treatment of domestic helpers, and so on. Why? Because of my mother, my formidable mother. She's been in many of my books. When I was 4 years old, my mother divorced, and she raised myself and my sister single-handedly, poor working-class background in an East London council estate. And she had an unbelievable dilemma that has stayed with me to this day as women face this across the world, and particularly in Singapore. She had a ridiculously unfair dilemma as a single mother. She either stayed at home with us and collected whatever benefits were available to her through the welfare state of the UK, and risk being stigmatized for not providing, for not going to work. If she went to work full-time, she was stigmatized for not staying at home and being a good mother. My mother, being my mother, somehow miraculously did both. She worked three jobs, and somehow managed to put me and my sister through university. And we never saw her. I mean, we never saw her. She was just this formidable, resilient woman. And she trained us from a very early age to cook for ourselves, to fend for ourselves. So I sort of semi-raised my sister, if you like, badly. And but the point was, I couldn't understand why she was constantly caught between two stools for all of our childhood. So she ended up doing this ridiculous thing that I know for a fact many Singaporean women do, which is she kind of worked on the black market, meaning she worked cash in hand. So she did cleaning jobs, and she worked in pubs and bars and restaurants and takeaways, as many workers do here, cash in hand work, don't worry the tax man too much kind of work. But if she declared those incomings, very small incomings I might add, but if she declared them, then the few benefits that she had as a single mother would have been lost. But there's my father on the other side of the fence. He's having a great time. He's earning a full income. He's going to football on a Saturday and getting drunk on Saturday nights. And no one's thinking any less of him. But my mother for 10 years was like, why are you not staying with your kids full time? And or why are you not working full time? And I was struck by this, and I've been writing about this ever since. Bring it full circle. About a year or so, my mother subsequently remarried. And a year ago, my stepfather was dying. As my mother likes to say, she either divorces them or she kills them. She's very much the Henry VIII of our family, something she's spectacularly proud of. She's 72 now, and she promises she's done with men. But, so he was dying. And he had this terrible thing called autoimmune deficiency, which just wiped out the last 6 years of his life. He got it when he was 59, he died when he was 65. Long story short, if he'd have had it here, to be frank, she would have had to have sold her house to pay for the healthcare. But welfare state, she got through it. But the important thing I want to stress is this, that Corinna has already touched on. Several things. One is, as his full-time carer, my stepfather, not my mother incidentally, my stepfather was eligible for this thing called attendance allowance, which is paid for by the state. Why is it paid to him and not her? Because then it gives dignity to both people. Because then he decides where that money goes. There's a degree of autonomy. He gets it, it's means tested case by case, but he gets this money. And in 90% of cases, it just goes to the next of kin, the husband or the wife or the full-time carer. So, but there was an element of dignity on both sides. As my stepfather, God bless him, liked to say, yes, she's cleaning my backside, but at least she's getting paid for it. A little bit of dignity for both parties. That is something that has always stayed with me. This idea that yes, and we'll talk more about filial piety later, but yes, their love for each other was never in dispute, but it's a tough job, it's a full-time job, and therefore there should be an element of payment for that work to help both parties. Neither of them were wealthy people. So I've written about this extensively, and then when it became my time to become a parent, it wasn't an option. I was the primary caregiver in our house because my wife has a fixed income, a regular career that she worked very hard to do and to achieve, and she still does it now as a teacher. My job is a little bit more flexible. So, of course, I become the primary caregiver. And all the time I was in Singapore, I would get the same question. Why? Cannot get a jobber. Cannot get a jobber. Why? Ang Moa. Cannot get a jobber. Cannot get a job. I chose to do this. Why? Cannot get, lose a jobber. Retrenched now. Very difficult now. It didn't register that this was a conscious decision on my part to become the primary caregiver because my wife had the fixed job, the career, and my job was a little bit more flexible. Yes, I took a pay cut. No, I didn't care. I wouldn't change it for the world because I think of my mother, that independent, resourceful, wonderful woman who inspires me every day. And throughout her life, she has given care, she has provided care with dignity, and that's what we should all try and achieve.
Awesome, Neil. Can I introduce you to my husband? Thank you very much for that sharing. I now want to move to Tim. And Tim, you've run a great organization. You know a lot about the challenges that caregivers, like our cheerful caregiver here, Neil, experience. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. Wow. I would like to just start off by saying I'd like to introduce you to the world of caregivers. And this comes from a quote that I gathered about 6 years ago. I was at a graduation class for one of our programs, Caregivers to Caregivers program. Just listen. Dark thoughts, can't think straight, drain physically, dare not leave mom alone, don't feel like working, work performance drop, no choice, no social life, loss. And this came from a gentleman who was a primary caregiver to his mom. But it's true, the statistics are very consistent over these many years. We have a database of about 23,000 caregivers. 73% are women. 6 years ago, we told our caregivers, please get your husband, your sons to come and join us. I was hoping to see a shift in the figure. It's still 72, 73%. So the majority of caregivers are actually women. Here we are talking about caregivers of persons with mental health issue. But I'm quite sure it's quite the same for elder care, for special needs, and so it goes. So it is largely someone like Neil's mom taking on that challenge to look after someone. But it's not really restricted to them. There are wonderful men as well who have taken on that duty to care. So what I am hoping here as we continue is that you understand my context. I'm really looking at caregivers of persons with mental health issue, and that's really on our heart, because the truth is this, mental health or mental illnesses, when we think of that, we think of maybe schizophrenia, OCD, bipolar disorder. But actually the three most common are depression, anxiety disorder, and guess what? Dementia. And that suggests to me and my colleagues that almost every one of us is a caregiver, right? You never know when it will hit you, but you can be sure if you have an elderly parent, you're going to perhaps one day have to look after somebody with dementia. So we are all caregivers. So I'm very glad we have this topic, the worth of caregivers. I have a slightly different perspective. We had a good sparring session, and let's see how that goes. But I think it's wonderful to have this chance to share from each of our perspective. And I hope that this will be of help to you. But I also hope to connect with you, first of all, that you are a caregiver. So you are one of my target audience as well, beneficiaries. Yeah.
Thank you, Tim. So I'm just going to kick off with questions. Dinesh, I'm going to put you on the spot first. I think a lot of the conversations that we have about care, how much support we need to give caregivers, comes up from time to time because there's this underlying sentiment that the care infrastructure, we're not sure if it's keeping up with changes in demographic and care needs. Could you tell us a bit about what you think is the ideal care system in Singapore? We don't really necessarily want to put our loved ones in institutionalized settings, but neither is home care suitable for people who have to work all the time. What's the right balance, and are we getting there?
Okay, thanks for that, Sulin. Firstly, I think most of our seniors, at least from the seniors' point of view, they'd rather be in the community, and they'd rather have some degree of independence to be able to do their usual stuff, right? Either be it in terms of going down for a coffee, meeting up with friends, etc. There will be some who would be, unfortunately, a bit more homebound, and that's because of the respective conditions that they might have. And I think in this regard, there are quite a lot of home care and home nursing services that are being provided by state. Although I think that particular avenue can be increased moving forward. So that's the first area. I speak also from the fact that my wife's grandmother was suffering from dementia for many, many years, almost 30 to 40 years. And my mother-in-law and father-in-law took turns to take care of her, sometimes with the support of her only other sister, my mother-in-law's only other sister, and her husband. So it takes quite a bit of energy, quite a lot of people to take care of people at home. But it really depends on the condition. Now, in the event where the person requires multiple support because they have got a whole host of issues, be it chronic illnesses or the lack of mobility and the like, then and only then should institutionalized care be considered. Partly because it is more efficient, where the care staff are all nearby and they can be taken care of 24/7. It allows the caregivers to also take a break by doing so. But unfortunately, sometimes the patient may not quite have the best experience because there's always a feeling of abandonment when that happens. Now, having said that, so I think one area that we can improve would be to increase the amount of home services that are being provided, to coordinate services within the area so that the seniors can be moved or right-sited so that they can have the best form of treatment in the most cost-efficient way, and to allow, at times, and we have started this program, and it's called the respite care, where sometimes the caregivers do really need just some time off, maybe a couple of days, to take a holiday, to take a break, to do other stuff. And while that happens, we have opened up our nursing homes so that people who may be on home care could be sited at the nursing home for a couple of days, and that gives the caregivers the much needed respite. So I think that's the overall landscape. But having said that, there's also an important element that we have been focusing on quite a bit together with people like Care Alliance and so forth, would be to have a network for our caregivers so that they know where they could reach for help, they could be supported, and they have a network supporting them, both in terms of the kind of support that they would need, both either physically or emotionally. And I think the latter is most important. So this is another area that we have started, and usually towards the end of the year, we have a caregivers day of sorts, and that's when we honor our caregivers and we try our best to support them in the best way that we can. So that's the current landscape that we have for our caregivers.
Tim, I'm just going to turn to you, since Dinesh has talked about what you do at Caregiver Alliance. Essentially, what you do with caregivers is something that is quite important, support networks. And it's not just an addition to the entire care system, it's a fundamental shift in how we think about care, providing that high-touch support. Could you identify for us, you think, the key areas of support that caregivers would benefit most, given the current state of affairs?
So for Caregivers Alliance, we are not a big organization. There are only about 51 of us. So we tend to see us as part of the larger ecosystem, other partners, also AIC, NCSS, People Association. We have a group of staff from PA here as well. So, for example, when we talk about how can we benefit caregivers, we have to look at what can we do and what others are doing. So for a time, many of my staff were asking, should we start operating a counseling center? But as we look back at what we are doing, we realize that the best way we can help caregivers is something very simple, training and emotional support. And we stuck to that. We stick to that. Because we did realize that when caregivers come to us for our training program, it is very clear they have a big need. They want to be better at caregiving. It's very obvious. And you see that because when they sign up for our 12 weeks program, for example, they stay with us. In fact, our funders sometimes wonder about that because they say, this is a free program, it's complimentary for caregivers, but you manage to get almost 90% graduation rates, right? So, and the reason is very simple. They came because they are really desperate. Some of them have been caring for 30 years and they still don't know what to do, right? Some of them are suddenly entrusted with caregiving and definitely they are lost. You think that Google can help? They get more confused after checking out Google, right? So they came to us and their needs was very simple. I want to learn. I want to learn how to be better at caregiving. And we realized that this is one way, or this is our way of contributing to the sector. We provide training so that within 12 weeks, that is our main program. 12 weeks also for eating disorder caregivers program. But we have an 8 weeks program for dementia and another 9 weeks program for young caregivers. So we call this the Caregivers to Caregivers training program. And that's where I think we are able to contribute something, because quite immediately when they come, they went through this 12 weeks or 8 weeks. They learn stuff, knowledge and skills, but I think what is really amazing for me is really founded on this statement that I keep hearing. What I've learned has changed me. What I've learned has changed me. I think it's very powerful. It's saying that we think training is just something you attend and then that's it, right? But it can change people, it can change caregivers and make them quite different. So for example, they are now more empathetic, more understanding, and it's also changed their perspective of, I need to care for myself, self-care. And that's very wonderful, because we notice many of our caregivers, they are just very focused on caring for their loved ones. So they don't think about themselves actually, and it's not good because they just keep going downhill because they don't know how to take care of themselves, right? So I'm glad we have Respite to support them through the nursing homes and so on. On our own, we also see that as a need. We have come up with a program called Respite Retreat for caregivers, and we hope that that will help them to really take a break and look after themselves. So back to this, how can we best support caregivers? Training, but we also support them with something called support network. I think, Dinesh, you talked about it just now. So one of our projects is really to build communities of support or community support network. So after they finish our 12 weeks program, we encourage them to sign up for a 1-year program, right? And for 1 year, they journey with one particular group of people for 12 months. They meet every month or more if they can. But the whole idea is that we hope to see after 12 months, they will become what we call self-organizing support group. They can take care of themselves, right? And for this, we were very glad to work with People Association, because we also see them as a wonderful partner, because People Association, they have a lot of facilities on the ground in different communities. So for us, for them, we came together and we say, what if we can help you form this support network in your community and let them tap into the resources and help and support from the grassroots leaders, from the MP himself. But as they come together in that community, we hope that some of them will become the community mental health champions in there. So whether it's Aya Raja, whether it's Bongo 21, we hope that, as we form all these support groups, they will start caring for not just themselves, but residents in that area who are suffering because they are caregiving for somebody else. So with the skills, the knowledge they have gained, they now are able to help others as well. So this is another area of support that we are providing, because finding that group of people who really understand you, and we are talking about stigma here, mental health stigma, it's not easy. In fact, many of them say, I don't want to tell people that I have somebody, a husband who is now just hiding at home, refusing to come out. Or I have a son or daughter who was doing well overseas, and now, again, is into self-harm, suicidal, and so on. So they don't like to tell people what they are going through. But when we put them in the class and they share openly of what happened in their lives, they get encouragement. They realize that they are not alone, and they decided that, well, I now have a group of people who will journey with me. So this idea of putting them into a community, a support group, is really about helping them to find friendship, helping them to find support, especially when they are in crisis. So I guess I'll stop here for now, but you can see that really it's not just making them able to learn about caregiving, caring for themselves, but it's also getting them into a community support group so that they can be assured that in that very long journey, there's always someone who is for them, whom they can call on if they are in a crisis. So that's what we are focused on. Yeah.
I want to throw this to Corinna, actually. So now that we've heard from Dinesh and from Tim, there seems to be this sense that community support has increased. in the intangible, the emotional welfare and help for caregivers on the one hand. We also see more government schemes, government support, financial or otherwise, increase over the years. And yet what Tim also says about how caregivers still feel a tremendous amount of stress and despair seems not to gel with that trend. Could you maybe talk a little bit about that? Is that not enough, all the support so far?
We're really concerned, and I think we should be, about the financial support and the sacrifice. And I know that the caregivers actually don't think of it as a sacrifice, but they do worry about their future. And a lot of our strategies for dealing with this has been what I call a private strategy. If you think foreign domestic workers, that is a private strategy, right? And for a long time, that was our main strategy. But only 20% of households in Singapore actually have domestic workers. This is not really affordable to many lower income households. So I do think we have to think more about the lower income groups, about the woman who is not so well off and has now to give up work. As we saw women give up work for childcare, as we age, we will have to give up work for elder care. And childcare, Singapore was actually quite late in developing this. Even though we want to have children, etc., it's only in 2025 coming up that we are going to be able to more or less accommodate the needs for childcare. We had to spend 10 years to build that infrastructure. I feel like for elder care, we are not going to have even that priority, because we're talking about older people. With childcare, I think the case is that we're building the future. But now we're talking about older people and not talking about productivity, right? So I really do worry, because we already took a very long time. Our research was in 2005. So this is not new. The demographics we could see it a mile away. But yet we find ourselves in this position where we don't have that infrastructure sufficiently. Home care, and it's not just about hard institutions. It's about, do we have the skills in the software, right, in Singapore to deal with this in a time when the whole world is aging? And that means that getting in labor from outside is going to be even tougher, right? So I feel like there are a lot of, we have to get back to this question of finance, paid work, and while we can support emotionally, I think that this is something that's quite hard to solve.
We're going to jump to Neil here. So just bringing back the conversation to our central topic about whether care work should be paid work, and drawing from your experience where your mother was able to do all those things because part of it was paid. Do you think that societal norms in Singapore has shaped the way we see care work? Ironically, people would say it's precious and invaluable. It's all about filial piety when it comes to elder care. But that is a double-edged sword, because it does sound like because it's expected, it should not be paid.
Absolutely. This is where you want the Angmo to talk about Confucianism to a room full of Singaporeans. Right, filial piety. When I first came to Singapore, I was a teacher. And when I was 8 years old, a kid wrote an essay for me on filial piety. And I thought I'd just met Einstein, right? Because how on earth, I didn't know what filial piety was. I'd never heard of it. Why would I, right? So I looked it up and I thought, my God, how can an 8-year-old know this kind of vocabulary and its meaning and its concept? This is genius. I gave him ridiculously like A+++ mark, and I took it to all the other teachers. And they was like, relax, Langmore, relax. Everybody knows filial piety from like kindergarten. So I did some reading. I wrote about it extensively, because fundamentally, and I want to stress this for the two guys on the panel here, Dinesh and Tim, what they do is absolutely extraordinary. The Confucian concept of filial piety is wonderful because I come from a country, UK, where we don't have that, and often the elderly are seen and not heard, and it's a completely opposite mentality. Then you come here and you've got that wonderful circle of life of service care. Parents look after the kids, then the kids look after the parents, and I like that. I like the aunties and uncles fortitude in Singapore. I really, really do like that. You see, I'm leading up to a big but, right? So I'm ticking all my boxes first. Here comes the but. Filial piety is Confucianism. Confucianism is family values. We like to throw out that term family values a lot in Singapore, sometimes for political reasons, to justify certain things. In this case, family values is traditional values. Traditional values of a lot of Confucianism and other aspects are patriarchal values. Let's call a spade a spade. They are patriarchal values. The woman's place is in the home. So good luck trying to say, yes, I believe in filial piety, therefore, husbands, stay home and work, stay home with the kids. It's going to be hard to fly, that one. That's the first point. The second point, as you mentioned correctly, is that I feel occasionally it can feel like it's used as a bit of a cop-out. Why should the state intervene? Why should we give them financial assistance? We're all doing it for the love. We're all about the love, right? Well, my stepmom and my stepfather and my mum loved each other most of the time, and they still got state support. But they decided, no, we do it for the love. We do it it would be shameful to give these folks money. Do not insult their love and their traditional values and their filial piety by offering financial support. Great. That works if you're middle class and you have a nice domestic helper who can take care of your loved ones. If you're that family living in a rental flat in Woodlands, you don't have that luxury. You don't. So you do have options. And I know the folks in the ministry here, you do have financial assistance. You do have some support. But you have to overcome those cultural and societal pressures that champion filial piety to put your hand up and say, I need financial help. Why would I do that in a culture that says, no, your responsibility, your family, your responsibility? That can inevitably lead to shame, and it can lead to guilt, and there should be nothing shameful or guilty about caring for loved ones. So of course it must be paid work.
Okay, we're running out of time, but I'll just throw a last question to everybody here, and maybe starting with you, Tim, because I think we're trying to concretize the idea of what does it really mean to pay for care work. And apart from the financial remuneration, I think we're trying to get at the nub of what it means to be able to support caregivers sufficiently, financially and otherwise. So one flip side of that question really is, if you ask caregivers what is the price they would put to be able to clone themselves and have that clone take care of their loved one, what do you think they'll say?
I'm not going to answer the question because I think there's something much, much more important I want to address. First of all, I don't really agree with him because I've seen many wonderful men, and the concept of, I don't know what kind of Confucius ethic you are talking about, but I don't remember there's one that says men must take care. I mean, must go on working, and it's not true because I've come across many men who are caregivers, and like you actually, they make a decision. The wife continue. I will do the caregiving. So I met wonderful Singapore men who did that. So I think that is the real Confucian ethics that we are talking about. But I think the more important thing is really related to what Corinna talked about, financial needs. Many of our caregivers took the plunge. It was very tough. Their financial resources are drying up, and they hope one day to go back to the workforce. I think this is a need that we can help to address. And I'm quite excited because when we were discussing, we were talking about flexible work arrangement. This is exciting because what it meant is that if someone, a talent in our company, we hope they will stay, but they have caregiving duty, and they are making a decision, should I stay or should I go into caregiving? Can we make it easy for that person and say that, what about a flexible work arrangement? You can continue working, less hours, remote work, whatever. Let's work out something because we value you. And we connect with what you are saying that you need to do this for your loved one. Can we have that? What if that single function or job can be shared by 2 or 3%? Can we do that? Because that means that not just that you can keep this talent, but you open up that same job to 1 or 2 more person. They don't need to do 40 hours a week, but part of that. And by the way, why are we sticking to this 40 hours a week to do a job, right? I think we are putting things the wrong way around. We should be asking, what's the job to be done? If it only takes 8 hours per week, so be it, right? But if it's 40 hours, really, then maybe we can think about, can I have 2 or 3%? There's actually an advantage in this. First of all, you offer more job opportunities to other caregivers who otherwise cannot get back into the workforce because it's been too long. They've been away for too long. But they have those experience and skill set that can be plugged in together with 1 or 2 others, and they share the same job. Isn't that wonderful? So I'm actually quite excited about the flexible work arrangement. It's for companies to rethink how they want to employ people. I think it'll be a bit more costly, a bit more harder to manage, but it opens up something that can be transformational for caregivers because many of them cannot get back to full-time work. Many of them, most companies will look at them and say, you've been away too long, right? But what if we are open to that and we perhaps put someone really good at the work but needs to be on part-time and add in a caregiver who wants to return, and the two of them cover that role. So I mean, for me, I'm quite excited because I think this will really open up and give a lot more opportunity for caregivers to come back into the workforce. For caregivers, you know, not to have to make that hard decision to leave their job. I mean, it's not a simple case of leaving the job. I'm sure they've taken many years, and it's something that they love, right? The nature of the work, their specialization. So for them to leave is a very tough decision. Can we make it easy for them to stay through a flexi work arrangement? Yeah.
If I can just address that, it's not so easy to stay in a job even when you have quite a sympathetic employer. So in the study that we had, where we had like 30 women, many people started with FWA, and eventually they said it was just a bit too much for the employer. It was also a bit too much for me. And so then they ended up just leaving. And the trigger was my parent has dementia or 2 ADLs, not 3, right? So I think FWA can help, but at some point, people might have to give up their jobs. Yeah, so, you know, just like, I think we need to have a whole range of strategies.
Okay, maybe I'll just say a few things first. I think the scenario in different households may be very different. And I think we can't, we have to figure what's the most sensible way of doing this at a national level. And in so doing, there are many ways we can solve this particular problem. I think it's going to be difficult, but there are some ways to do it. It was highlighted that the folks who need the help the most, those in the rental houses in Woodlands, for example, are indeed taken care of. Can we do more? I think we should, and we can. The second part of it would be, well, is there an overly high burden on ladies than men? I think yes, but although much of the younger people coming up these days are quite happy to share the burden with their wives. I take myself as an example. I am caring for a semi-dementia uncle. He has no kids and his wife passed away before COVID. And myself, my brother, the only 2 nephews that he has, together with my parents, are helping to take care as well. Is it easy? It's definitely not easy. There's a drain on all of us. But if it needs to be done, I think we have to find a way. And we are seeing a generation of males who are stepping up. Maybe in future more will come up. And perhaps PM has set the tone for babies and taking care of young families, and perhaps something similar can be used for taking care of the elderly as well. I do agree that we do need to have more options for our workforce so that they can take care of their people who require caregiving. Now, having said that, I think the biggest problem will be for ladies particularly who have stopped working and then to restart again in the workforce. This is an area where I think more should be done from a personal point of view. My personal view is that maybe we should look at this like a national service of sorts, right? You spend a year away, you come back, you don't lose anything in between. Or you go out for a couple of weeks, or whatever the case may be. So I think there would be a need for further discussions and for policy owners to look at this. But I wanted to just add that at the end of the day, paid work is always good. Paid work to whom is what we need to be mindful of. And at the end of the day, who pays is something that we all have to keep in mind as well. I for one would not like to see GST go up any further, but if that becomes a drain on all of us to be able to do so, then that might be the outcome that we'll have to look at in the longer run. Thanks.
Tim and Dinesh are the real heroes on this panel. I have to stress that, along with the many charitable enterprises that I know are here today who support when it comes to care work. To get back to the question, should it be paid work? Of course it should. Male, female. I would look beyond that to the corporate leaders in the room. As I mentioned to you before, my brother-in-law's brother has Down syndrome, and he was very unhappy with how the care he was getting in the UK. So along with my sister, they set up their own care company for folks with special needs. It's now one of the biggest in the UK. They employ more than 200 people. And if you want to upset my sister, call it a charitable enterprise. Nothing will upset my sister more than if you call it a charitable enterprise. I want to make this clear. I'm not disparaging the charities and the philanthropy. It is magnificent. But her point is no. This is professional work. We employ resources to train care workers to go out there and do a professional job. And to answer the question specifically and directly, they get above minimum wage in the UK, which is about $20 an hour. Now, of course, when you're looking after families, it's not paid by hour. So they work out arrangements and salaries and so on. It is a mix of private and public investment. It's not that hard, and I'll be very frank, they make a good living doing it. But they do it knowing that every single day they are providing professional, appropriately paid care workers to alleviate the burden from mothers and fathers. So we can sit here all day arguing about should it be the mother, should it be the father, The point is, employ professional care workers, give them a decent, dignified wage to do a job that is dignified for Singaporeans. It really is that simple.
Okay,
That's
I'm
a
looking
good
at the
solution.
clock, and we've just got about under 5 minutes left. I think this is a really good time to open the floor for questions. I'm sure you have a lot of questions for our fantastic panelists here. So the mics are on the left and right. Kani, go for it.
Thank you. My name is Kanwajit Soin. I read a study done by Duke NUS where they said that informal care of older people, the amount is 1.2 billion a year. That's what it costs, the informal care. So this could be, the state has a rough estimate of how much it is saving by allowing informal caregiving for older people. And in fact, the study went on to say it was 60 hours a week and all, and they did not include the salary being paid to domestic workers. So that is one thing that the state can do. This $1.2 billion could be given into the CPF of caregivers or to train professional caregivers to look after the older people. Second thing is, it was, I think Mr. Tim Lee talked about flexible working arrangements being very good for caregiving. That could work for people of school-going children, because when the children go to school. But flexible working hours are not what is required in caregiving. Caregiving is a 24-hour job. It's not flexible, and I'm talking of dementia or with more people who are more advanced in age. So that will not be the hopeful answer that we are looking for. It's only a partial answer. So one of the two suggestions I have to make, because caregiving is really, I mean, we are living now longer lives, and every 10 years, lives get extended by 3 years. So our life expectancy is going to go up. Of course, one of the promises we have is the healthier SG. So healthy life expectancy will go up, as with longer life expectancies, so that the period of caregiving can be shortened. But that's one good hope on the horizon. Thank you.
Okay, just a quick response to that. In Caregivers Alliance, we have about 49 staff now. Out of the 49 staff, we have 28 staff who are caregivers, right? So you're right, there are certain caregiving scenarios where it's just not possible. But 28 of them have gotten a job, returned to the workforce, and they are now serving with us, becoming professional caregivers to other caregivers. So it's possible. And actually, 5 of them are persons in recovery. So they are struggling with a mental health issue. I think the challenge is that companies, employers, business owners need to have that mindset shift. Because, I mean, the 1st December deadline where all these FWA policies must be in place, right? It's a regulation, right? It's a guideline. But so what? You put up a policy paper, you put it up there, but you don't have people on the ground, a manager, a business leader, having that mindset of, hey, I really care for my staff. I want to understand each of them. What are their needs? Do they need flexible work? So I think that is the big difference. And that education, not just education, but to change some of these business leaders, I think that is an important thing to do as well. Because you can force it, but at the end of the day, it takes the managers to make that decision, to be flexible enough to adapt from the directive and support a colleague who needs that help. And maybe it's just for a short while, but that will really be a big difference for that employee. And I think he will look back and say, what a wonderful company this is. They really care for me. They really value me. They really want me to stay. So I think that is something I would hope for as well. It's not just regulation. It is also people, all of us here. So long as you're a manager, please have that conversation with your direct reports 1st of December when that FWA thing comes about. Sit down and ask your colleagues what help they need from you. Do they need a flexi work arrangement? So I think that is a point that I hope will address the fact that, yes, it's correct. Not every case will apply, but there are enough caregivers out there who wants a job back, they want to get back to the workforce. I can't hire every one of them. Can help, some of you please help as well. Please hire them. They are wonderful people, and you should get them in because they are, first of all, people with what we call life experience. They have gone through that. Maybe no more caring because their loved one has passed on. Maybe the loved one has recovered, right? So that's why they need a job. They want to come back, right? So that's my response to your comments. Yeah.
So let's just round up because we are way over time, but because this is the Summit for Action on Gender Equality, maybe I can end off by asking everybody here, what is one thing that you think we can do to move the needle on care work for the audience to take away?
I think the fastest thing, like one thing that all employers can do is really give voluntary care leave. Or, I'm not sure about the legality of this, but can we already say that the medical leave that people have, sick leave, can be used for employees' dependents, right? So that is something that I would do immediately.
I think we have a decent system, may not be the most perfect. I do think there are certain areas where we can strengthen the system further, be it in terms of training that we give to caregivers, awareness of where the trainings can be found, support for people who really need it, respite cares, psychological support. We have a system in place. I think there are areas for which we can expand that significantly. I do think that we can learn a lot from what has been done for taking care of young families to then mirror it for the elderly. I do think we are still in time if we can do this fast enough from a policy standpoint, and it would take it will be a issue that we will face which is way bigger than one particular agency. And as long as we can do this with coordination and flexibility, I think we'll be in a far better place in years to come. Thank you.
Ideally, yes, I would go for all care workers should be paid at least a minimum wage, but that's my idealistic one. But I know you want concrete, actionable ideas to finish. And it's about money. It's always about money. Corinna, can I check? Is it about $1 billion in domestic helper levies every year? Is it $1 billion? More? Less?
It's a lot. I'm not sure whether it's $1 billion, but it's a lot.
I knew it used to be 600 million,
Yeah.
somewhere around there. Take those levies straight away today. I don't know why they go into a big government pot. We have more than enough money to get by as a country. Use that money today to start giving domestic helpers a better salary, better training, better off days, and start there. It's not the ideal scenario, but at least it's a positive, actionable step in the right direction. Better trained domestic helpers, more days off, more professional, more money. Let's start there.
Tim, take us home.
Okay. I kind of changed from my script in a way, but my biggest wish is really for all of us here in this room. You hold a job or you are running a business, whatever. Will you think of somebody? We are talking about actionable, something you can do, right? Go back, think of somebody, your colleague or someone reporting to you, and have a conversation, a dialogue. You know, how are you? Because some of them might be struggling very badly. And because of mental health stigma, they are not going to tell anybody. But maybe that dialogue conversation will help let them open up to you. And once you hear that, you know, you can think about what you can do as an action item for them. I think that's what is needed. We need people, not just directives and policies. We need people who really care for their colleagues and who will do something about that. So that's my call. Thank you.
Okay, with that, I think it's coffee break. Please.
Can I just ask one very important thing before we finish? Is this going out live on Facebook?
Oh, it already has.
Because I've got this terrifying feeling now that my mother's watched the whole thing. I just called her Henry VIII. So if she's watching, Mum, I'm sorry. Okay.
That's funny. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ms. Lim, Mr. Dinesh, Mr. Humphreys, Mr. Lee, and Ms. Lin. SCWO President Dr. Xiao again will do the honors. She's coming up to present a token of appreciation. We will take a brief coffee break. There's food outside. Unfortunately, I hear the coffee machine has broken down.